I want to welcome everybody today to our first Lunch and Learn webinar. Thank you so much to our associates at the NIH. I'd like to introduce you to Michael Salgaller and Joe Conrad. I also want to mention to you that if you have any questions, please type in your questions and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Thank you for attending, everyone. Joe?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending. My name is Joseph Conrad. I am a Technology Transfer Manager at the National Cancer Institute's Technology Transfer Center. I'm in the Invention Development and Marketing Unit, and on the line as well with me is the Unit Supervisor, Michael Salgaller. We will be walking you through the NIH's methods of doing business with outside organizations and companies such as yourselves. So just by way of quick background, I am a former patent examiner. I'm a biochemist by training, Ph.D., and also have a law degree. So I spent a lot of time with the patent process, working at the patent office and a few DC law firms, and now I use those skills at the NCI's Tech Transfer Center. With that, I'll ask Michael just to give a brief background of himself, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hosting us. My background is as a medical researcher starting at the National Institutes of Health. I've spent some time as an entrepreneur with several startups, both in a scientific and also executive capacity. Spent some time on the investment team of an early stage venture capital fund. Spent some time with a life science-based lobby firm in downtown DC, and came back to NCI about a year and a half ago to head up the unit that I have the pleasure of serving on with Joe.
Hey, Joe, we can't hear you all of a sudden.
Oh,
there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. You want to go back to those first couple of slides because we did not hear you.
Sure, absolutely. We'll go back. Hang on a second. I get a do-over here. Okay, so with the first slide, with the NIH being the research agency for the federal government for the United States, our goal is primarily to develop the technology. We want to attract new research and development opportunities. Also want to benefit the public health. So what most people realize the NIH is in existence for. But the other thing that most people and most organizations aren't aware of is that the NIH's purpose is also to stimulate economic development. So what does that really mean? Well, the technology that's developed in the NIH actually needs to move out and get into the hands of the public. So examples of that would be, for example, Gardasil, which most people are familiar with, the HPV virus vaccine, Bavencio, which is a treatment for Merkel cell carcinoma, and our favorite it actually is squirrel-proof bird seed. We had an NCI researcher doing some work on capsaicin, and they found out that squirrels can't stand it, but birds can't taste it. And some entrepreneurial investigator in a lab at NIH decided, you know what, I think I might coat some birdseed with this and see how it goes. And so it went very well, and you can see the product there. It's available at pet stores everywhere. But in addition to that, people are also a little confused or not aware of various different things that the NIH can do. So one of the things that we like to do is talk about the myths about working with NIH, because most people look at NIH as being a basic research facility. They also consider that, you know, drugs are the primary focus. And as far as technology is concerned, they feel that they can't touch it. And working with NIH is somewhat of a cumbersome process for some people. At least they believe that it is. One of the things that we wanted, well, several of the things that we wanted to dispel as far as those myths are concerned is that NIH is not only a basic research facility, but we also do translational and clinical research, and we have clinical and translational assets. So a lot of the studies that come out of the NIH and a lot of the technology that comes out of the NIH goes far beyond the basic research that people believe that we are limited to, right? We also do, as far as drugs are concerned, we also do devices and diagnostics and biomarkers, and we have tools for research use. So we are quite diverse in the type of development technologies that we have. With respect to licenses, it is possible to get an exclusive license for a particular technology that the NIH does have. And the exclusivity terms can be negotiated with the specialists who handle those particular type of licensing agreements. And the process being cumbersome, not so much. We are transactional experts. And so we are very proficient at getting technologies moved out of NIH, whether it be material transfer agreement, transfer with universities, and or with companies. We move those technologies very quickly. We have an office that is staffed by some between 50 and 60 people who are experts in tech transfer processes. And if you want to compare that to other universities, no disrespect to the other universities, but their technology transfer offices are much smaller, say between, say, 8 to 15 people. So we have a lot of technology coming through our office, and we have the capacity and the assets to be able to move it very quickly. So what's technology transfer? So the technology transfer process for the federal government, the NIH particularly, is we have to partner with commercial developers. We have to partner with the outside community, such as yourselves, to move our technology forward and get it to the hands of the patient populations that need them. The Federal Technology Transfer Act was created to facilitate this process, where the researchers create the ideas are patented by the NIH, and those patents move into the private sector through collaborations and license agreements, because we do not manufacture. The NIH and the federal government are not manufacturing facilities. We need to partner, and those partners who collaborate with us and eventually license our technology are responsible for putting the products into the marketplace. So just a quick analogy here. If you think about the space program, if you've had a frozen dinner, that technology was initially made by NASA, but it moved into the private sector through the Technology Transfer Act to make things like frozen dinners and freeze-dried foods such as Tang, moved into Kool-Aid, et cetera. So, you know, NIH technology has to make its way out of the labs into the hands of the private sector so that the products can get on the shelves for the consumers, or in NIH's case, the medications and therapies can get into the bodies of the patients that need them. Okay, so we connect our inventors with external partners, and we turn those ideas that we develop here into health products through collaborations with organizations such as yourselves. And so from that perspective, who are the players that we normally work with? Who are the potential partners that we partner with? In most cases, or in some cases, and cases that most are familiar with, we partner with large and mid-sized companies. That's obvious. So we partner with our Mercks, our AstraZenecas, in the usual way. But it doesn't preclude our engagement with the larger pharmas, does not preclude our involvement with the smaller players, the investors, angel investors or venture capitalists who are looking for technologies to form companies around. New entrepreneurs such as yourselves, and technology scouts who are looking for technologies to build companies around as well. Startup companies that are looking to expand their pipelines, for example. So if you start up with a new technology that you've developed and you say, okay, I need something else in my pipeline, where can I go either enhance what I have or start something new? The NIH is a good place, a good resource to come to for that next technology in your pipeline for a particular startup. We also work with economic development entities. So we'll work with state and local governments. Also, we'll work with foreign countries. Our unit has gone on to visit the economic development ministries of several embassies in the U.S., actually in the D.C. area. Since we are here, we have access to the economic development ministries for those particular countries that we visited. We also work with foundations to help them determine where their next investment is going to be. And we also work with service providers who make technologies that we have available, provide access to technologies that we have available. And some of those service providers, for example, if you've heard of the organization called AdGene is a service provider that we use that provides access to some of our research tools from vectors for various different purposes that researchers would like to use in their research, either academically or in companies. All right, so how are we set up? The NIH basically has 27 institutes that are represented here. I work for the institute in orange, Michael and I. We also support the activities of the 9 other institutes that are identified here in green. Each of these institutes are too small to have their own technology transfer office, and we handle all of the tech transfer needs and manage the technologies for each of these institutes. So if you come to NIH and you say, okay, I want to work with NCI, what technologies do we have? If your technology interest actually falls outside of what the NCI may do, it may fall into one of the other 27 institutes or the 9 that we support. If it does fall into another institute, then we can facilitate the connection between you and that institute that we do not support. But every institute is supported by its own tech transfer office, either as a group or individually, and we can put you in touch with the right contact person to help you get the technology that you are looking for. All right, so what type of assets does the NIH or the NCI have in its patent portfolio? So we cover the gambit from small molecules to biologics. We also have devices and diagnostics. We actually work with vaccines, and we do have software. Our research tools, we have access to those, and companies have access to the research tools through a non-exclusive biological material license that can be made available to anyone who's interested. It's a nominal charge for dealing with a biological material license, but it gives you access to research tools that are developed at the NIH and NCI for research use only. If you are an academic and there's a particular research tool that you want to have access to, we make that available to academic institutions and nonprofits free of charge through just a material transfer agreement. We also have preclinical and clinical stage technologies as well that individuals, organizations, nonprofits can look at as well or consider bringing into their organization for any particular use. So the type of agreements, we work with cooperative and licensing agreements. We are agreement experts. We're transactional experts, and we do a lot of work. As you see from this graphic here, these numbers are last year's numbers, and we are very good at moving CRADAs, and CRADA is a cooperative research and development agreement. That's the partnering agreement that most collaborators will use to develop technologies that are of interest to them. But in terms of how efficient we are, if you look at the top left panel, we do some 3,000, 3,600 agreements a year. That's about 10 agreements a day. And so going back to the myth that we're very difficult to work with, we're very proficient and very successful with what we do. So we provide that expertise. We provide equipment and materials. When you're talking about collaborating with the government, this is what you're going to get. You know, the expertise that we have access. You have access to our equipment and materials. The collaborators will provide the same and possibly money to support the collaboration. The collaborator has the right to elect an option to an exclusive license on the technology that they develop with the NIH or the NCI. We all have the ability to address technology and knowledge gaps from outside parties. So working with the PIs in the NIH or NCI will provide that expertise to help solve challenges that companies may have coming into a collaboration. And like I had mentioned before, you know, the access to the technology can help enhance the pipeline of any company that we're working with. Okay, so some examples, we have a few success stories of how this actually works. So in terms of industry coming to NIH with technology that they would like to incorporate into, say, an NIH study or have validated in some kind of way, we met an organization or a company called Somnology. And this particular company is in the area of sleep. If anyone's ever had a sleep study done for sleep apnea or some other type of sleep-related disorder, if you're familiar with the process, or if you're not familiar with the process, what you do is you go to a center with your pajamas. They hook you up to a lot of wires. They turn on some cameras, and then they tell you to sleep in a very weird location that's uncomfortable, and it's really creepy having people watch you while you sleep. So the data that they get from these sleep studies, because you're in a very unfamiliar, uncomfortable environment, is not very reliable. So what this company did was said they developed a wearable technology that collects the same type of data as the sleep studies, but you can wear this in the privacy of your own home, sleep in your own bed, and not have to worry about people watching you while you're sleeping. The data is a lot more reliable, and for that reason, we were able to partner them with a investigator at the NIH who was using a sleep study to look at the effect of diabetes on sleep. And so we put him in contact with the company CEO. The two of them had several meetings, and then soon after those meetings were over, they were negotiating a collaboration agreement to begin the study or use of this particular device in that particular study. And the research collaboration agreement was executed in 3 months from the time that the PI met with the CEO to discuss the synergy between the two. So that's one example of industry to NIH. We have another example where we went from NIH to industry. So what we did was give a webinar similar to what we're doing now to an organization called AVAMed. And so if you're not familiar with AVAMed, AVAMed is the device industry equivalent of what bio is to the pharma industry. So we presented this webinar to AdvaMed's membership, and a company on the webinar found interest in this particular technology, which is a glue. Essentially, so if you look at the graphic on the right-hand side, basically when you are trying to put together two arteries or two capillaries or whatever, when you're transferring organs and the like, you need something to hold those ends in place. And so we developed a glue, essentially, that allows these ends of an artery to hold together while they're being sutured. And then the glue is removed through UV light irradiation, and allows, it actually dissolves without any particular staying in the artery or anything. So this particular company, Hemostasis, contacted us after the webinar, same day, and initial conversations took place about 2 days later. And from that, they were scheduled to talk about the possibility of moving into a license 2 weeks after the initial call with us, actually from the 2 weeks from the date of the actual webinar. So as you can see from these two examples, we are pretty efficient in terms of being able to generate meaningful relationships with companies moving forward once they have an interest in the technology. All right, so I am trying to move this next slide and my mouse has just, hang on a second. All right, so in terms of the type of agreements that organizations such as yourselves could use to get started, we have developed a new startup licensing agreement. It's called Startup 2.0. The terms of this, a term limited exclusive startup evaluation license. So this is primarily for companies developing early stage vaccine therapeutic device and diagnostic technologies from intramural researchers within the NIH and the NIH institutes that the NCI will support. And those are the ones in the green graphic in the previous slide. So in addition to NCI, those other institutes, the National Eye Institute, National Institute on Aging, Child Health, Drug Abuse, Minority Health, the Clinical Center, and some other institutes here that we have listed. Though that technology, that particular startup license agreement applies to each of those that are listed. What do the companies need to qualify? Well, the companies need to be less than 5 years old. They have to have less than $5 million in capital raised, and they have to have fewer than 50 employees in order for this license to apply to their interest in any particular technology that we support. Features of this license include a 24-month option period. At the effective date, or 60 days after the effective date, there is a $5,000 execution royalty fee that needs to be paid. And then after 1 year, there is a $5,000 patent royalty due after that first year. The eligible technologies for which this startup license applies are greater than 4 years old from the earliest priority date of a patent filed application. The NIH will pay the patent expenses during that option period while that license is in force, that application or the company's engaged in that first year. And lastly, there is an option to convert that license to an exclusive patent license if the company is meeting its milestones of the original agreement and a revised commercial development plan is prepared and supports the commercial advancement of the technology. So I'm going to turn this over to Michael now, and he's going to talk about the NIH value proposition with respect to your involvement with us to help you develop your technology. Michael?
Thank you, Joe. So the main message is that working with NIH can be something that benefits a company's bottom line as well as their pipeline. And so in fiscal year 2013, if you added up all the product sales from products that either were directly licensed from NCI and NIH or were co-developed by NCI and NIH, it came to a little over $7 billion. So it isn't just access to shiny technical objects, it's also the opportunity to significantly increase your revenues. We do get revenues from that that we use to bolster our research budget, and last year we got NCI itself over $133 million in royalties and SBI and in CRADA payments. So it's a major way for us to increase the budgets that we receive from Congress. So you can make money by working with us. You can validate your technology. You can do that through preclinical work or through first-in-human studies. Very important for those companies that are private, that if you license something into your company from NIH, we don't take any of your company. We don't have a mechanism as a federal lab to take equity. We can't have our director, Francis Collins, sit on your board of directors. And so you can actually add to your pipeline without diluting any of your ownership. And having been a former venture capitalist, I can tell you that that certainly is an advantage versus our other cancer center colleagues who will want somewhere between 10 and 20% of your company in order to get an exclusive license from them into your pipeline. So yes, there are the standard downstream monies such as milestone and royalty payments, but especially smaller companies, it's better for them and their lifespan to have monies downstream and back-ended as much as possible. And since we do not take equity, it's a great chance for companies to augment their pipeline without diluting their position. We don't take your IP. You come in with IP, it stays yours. If we co-develop IP, then you have the opportunity to negotiate an exclusive license. You get the imprimatur of working with a very well-known institution. We're a good brand. We don't have to explain to people what NIH is, and so there's a good prestige factor of working with us. And we also get the honor and excitement of working with you, since you have technologies and innovations that we would not otherwise have access to. So it's definitely a two-way street as far as benefit. So if you could go on to the next slide, Joe.
Sure. Let's see. Trying to move it. Here we go. All right.
So this is an example of some of the monies that products made that, again, were either licensed from NIH or were the result of a partnership with NIH. The item at the top that actually was executed last year, Kite was acquired by Gilead for over $11 billion, and some of the cancer drugs that have substantial worldwide sales are shown below. And this is true also for products outside of the oncology space. Pretty much any major market sector is represented by a commercial product from an NIH license or co-developed asset. And if you go on to the next slide. And we can work with any size company anywhere in the world. Many of you may be familiar with the Small Business Innovative Research Program, SBIR. It's a terrific program. It is, though, limited to companies in the US that are less than 500 people. What we're describing is working with our investigators who, on a day-to-day basis are increasing the knowledge in medical research and coming up with innovations, and you can leverage that activity. So it's not a competitive process. There's no application to get started. You just reach out to us, and Joe will have contact information on an upcoming slide. So as you can see on the left, we're already working with people around the world, and we want to increase that, especially in areas that are growing markets, such as the US, Europe, and Asia. And we already do about the same amount of agreements with for-profit entities that we do with universities. And so getting back to Joe's earlier myth slide, we would probably guess that most audience we speak with figures that, I don't know, 80% of the agreements we do are with academics or nonprofits. And it's actually about the same percent, about 42% as we do with companies. So we have a lot of activity, but we also have good technologies and investigators that want to do more work with companies, and we would love to talk to you about that. So if you go to the next slide, I'll hand it back to Joe to wrap up.
All right, thank you, Michael. And so that's essentially NIH, NCI, how we do business with you, how we'd like to have you do business with us. My contact information is there as well as Michael's. We also have a pretty nice website if you'd like to just take a look and peruse around. It's searchable. All of the technologies that we have available are listed on that website. So if you go to techtransfer.cancer.gov, as we have here, that will put you into our website where you can search technologies of interest, and it's searchable by technology area and also by disease. So feel free to take a look. If you find anything, reach out. If you just want to talk with us about trying to find a match, we do that as well. So if you contact myself or Michael and say, I'm interested in this, I have a technology that I'd like to possibly get validated in, say, a clinical study, we can try to help find a match for you there as well. So either reach out to us directly, look at our website, or and just contact us, and we're here to help. So with that,
a really quick comment,
sure.
comment, Joe. I just want to. One of the questions we often get is, are you guys different than a CRO? Because what we're describing sounds like that. And so if a company is interested in work for hire, in other words, the company knows the project they want to do, they have all the boxes checked off, and they just want to pay somebody to perform services, then certainly worldwide there are a number of excellent CROs that they could tap into. What we're talking about is an intellectual exchange. So yes, there's work being done on both sides, and on a case-by-case basis, we may receive monies to, say, run a drug through a special animal model. But we want to have relationships that do require an intellectual exchange, perhaps the generation of new intellectual property, but something where you're looking to leverage people's minds and not just their hands.
Right. Thank you, Michael. So with that, we can open it up for questions. And back to Tammy.
That was fantastic. Thank you guys so very, very much. Does anyone have questions here that you'd like to ask? Lars, talk up. Oh, Lars was just saying that your presentation was very clear and very understandable. Dr. Friedman, do you have anything?
Thank you.
They're thinking.
They're thinking, okay.
Not only do I hear the wheels going, but I smell the wood burning too. Okay, so basically, you will be getting back to me with this slide deck so that if anyone needs it, we can send it to them. Okay. I don't see any questions on the queue at this point. So I think we're in good shape. I do want to let
Okay.
everyone know that our next webinar will be held April 24th. The presenter is Earl Hager, and he's going to be talking about commercializing biotechnology, market entry, and partnerships. Michael and Joseph, thank you so very, very much. I'm sure there'll be questions, and I'm sure that people will be contacting you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for hosting us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share what we have for you. And we're looking forward to working with you. So with that, have a great day, and look forward to hearing from you.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.